Tonight, a president under pressure. Joe Biden attempts to change the conversation and restore some lost credibility. His first interview since the debate disaster.
It's a bad episode. Nobody's fault but mine.
And a pledge that he can still win.
I'm staying in the race.
The unemployment rate climbs, with young Canadians hit the hardest.
It's very difficult right now in the job market to get a job.
Also, a fiery highway collision involving a driver too young to be on the road.
I never saw him coming. All I felt was a massive hit from behind.
Plus, saddling up in Calgary for the greatest outdoor show on earth.
This is my first time at the Stampede Parade. I'm having a blast. Woo!
And the inspiration behind some remarkable pieces.
A really big goal of the work for me is to just bring joy and beauty.
How an autism diagnosis led to an artistic breakthrough.
What do you think cats dream of?
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. With the future of his campaign at stake, U.S. President Joe Biden appeared in his first televised interview since his widely criticized debate performance last week that sent Democrats into a panic. It ignited concerns over his age, mental fitness, and the ability to defeat Donald Trump. In an exclusive interview with ABC News anchor George Stephanopoulos, Biden took responsibility for the stumbles.
Was this a bad episode or the sign of a more serious condition?
It was a bad episode. No indication of any serious condition. I was exhausted. I didn't listen to my instincts in terms of preparing, and I had a bad night. He also lied 28 times. The way the debate ran, not my fault, nobody else's fault. No one else's fault.
But it seemed like you were having trouble from the first question in, even before he spoke.
Well, I just had a bad night.
Are you sure you're being honest with yourself when you say you have the mental and physical capacity to serve another 4 years?
Yes, I am, because, George, the last thing I want to do is not be able to meet that. I think, as some of the senior economists and senior foreign policy specialists say, if I stop now, I'd go down in history as a pretty successful president. No one thought I could get done what we got done.
But are you being honest with yourself as well about your ability to defeat Donald Trump right now?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
And for more, we'll bring in CTV's political analyst, Eric Ham. Eric, do you think he's being honest with himself?
Look, every president in the modern era has lived in a bubble, and Joe Biden is no different than all of these other presidents. The only difference with Joe Biden is that when he steps out of that bubble, his age and his fitness become far more amplified. And I think that is what he is confronting, and that is what he is dealing with, and that is what he has to address.
Can he change that narrative?
We will see. Only time will tell. But the clock is ticking because we know a convention is taking place in just over a month. And so he doesn't have much time to actually fix this.
So, Eric, there are growing calls for him to step aside from within his own party. If that becomes a reality, who could take his place at this time?
There are many names being bandied about who could actually be the nominee if, in fact, Joe Biden steps aside. But all names still come back to, once again, Kamala Harris, because Kamala Harris will have access to the millions of dollars that have already been raised. Her name is already on the ballot in every state. And of course, right now, at least polling data is showing that she is very competitive with Donald Trump versus some of the other names that have been mentioned so far.
Eric, we appreciate your insight. Thank you. Turning now to Canada's stalled job market. The unemployment rate rose to 6.4% in June, its highest level in more than 2 years. CTV's Sarah Plowman on the unexpected job losses and who is being hit the hardest.
Canada's labour market is cooling. Even workers with secure jobs have tasted the pain.
It was very difficult to just keep on applying to places and either not getting a response or getting a response too late.
Canada lost a net 1,400 jobs in June. The economy shed positions in transportation and warehousing and gained in the food and agriculture industries.
There's not that many layoffs going on. That's not what's driving these weak job numbers. It's that jobs aren't getting started.
Unemployment has been trending up for more than a year. Young people feel it. This June saw the highest unemployment rate for youth in a decade, barring 2 years during the pandemic. It's especially tricky for students looking for summer jobs.
Multiple of my friends have been applying to even fast food places aren't taking people.
A lot of my friends who are either in university or have just graduated university keep having the same conversation about how it's very difficult right now in the job market to get a job.
Businesses that were in short supply of workers 2 years ago now have too many applicants.
We don't like to turn away good people, but we'd rather that than be short.
The good news for workers is hourly wages are up more than 5% compared to last June, but both inflation and job numbers are key factors as the Bank of Canada considers whether to cut key interest rates at the end of the month.
There's still a lot of tension here as to whether we'll get to that 2% mark on inflation.
Another inflation report is expected before the central bank makes its next decision, set for July 24th. Heather.
Sarah, thank you. Some scary moments along one of the busiest highways in North America this morning. A vehicle traveling along the 401 near Toronto rear-ended a van before spinning into a ditch and catching fire. Police say the driver, too young to be behind the wheel. CTV's Mike Walker reports.
A traffic camera along Highway 401 shows heavy smoke billowing from a vehicle that crashed into the ditch near Mississauga Road. After provincial police say it rear-ended another vehicle on the highway. The driver, the OPP say, was only 14 years old.
I never saw him coming. All I felt was a massive hit from behind on the driver's side rear, and it just spun me around. This is where the impact happened.
John Tazanzas was on his way to work when he says he was rear-ended in the eastbound lanes just after 6 this morning. He says the force of the impact lifted 2 of his tires off the ground and sent his vehicle crashing into the concrete barrier.
I'm just lucky because my vehicle was still sticking out in the fast lane, and it could have been a lot worse than it ended up being. It could have been hit by a tractor trailer.
Police say the 14-year-old driver took their parents' vehicle out to get food and that they received multiple reports of the vehicle driving erratically on the 401. After the fiery crash, the teen driver and passenger attempted to take off from the scene, but were caught by police.
I just saw them running up the highway towards the Erin Mills Parkway, and I guess they were picked up by the OPP.
That's when Tazanza said he heard an explosion. In this picture, you can see the vehicle is charred beyond recognition.
If they'd gotten trapped in that vehicle, they'd be in a world of trouble. We're very lucky.
Suspension's all gone.
Tazanza says his vehicle is a write-off, and he's incredibly lucky to walk away from this crash with only minor injuries.
At 14 years old, it's unbelievable. No hard feelings. I'm just glad that, he escaped and he got out of that mess that he could have been in, because that thing exploded really, really nasty.
The OPP have charged the 14-year-old boy from Mississauga with driving without a license, careless driving, and failing to remain at the scene. Mike Walker, CTV News, Mississauga.
The uncontrollable rash of car thefts that have plagued this country appears to be affecting consumer trends at dealerships. A new survey shows buyers want to know if their vehicle is more likely to be targeted by thieves before they make their purchase. CTV's Kamal Kramali reports.
The national crisis of car thefts now impacting which vehicles consumers decide to buy at the car lot.
Consumers are more aware about vehicle theft than ever, and they're actually now looking at it when it comes time to making their selections of a vehicle.
A Nano survey shows 4 in 10 Canadians say knowing whether a vehicle is more likely to be targeted by car thieves is an important factor in deciding which vehicle to purchase, while 34% say car thieves targeting specific makes and models is not a factor in their car purchase.
We do see a lot of SUVs, we see a lot of luxury vehicles and pickup trucks that are very attractive for thieves.
A lot of that concern in Ontario and Quebec, with roughly 45% of those surveyed in each province wanting to know if their vehicle purchase would more likely be a target for thieves, with a lot fewer in BC, the Prairies, and the Atlantic saying it's important for them to know that information.
To me, this speaks to the fact that those two provinces are probably ground zero for a lot of this activity in terms of stolen vehicles.
An estimated 90,000 vehicles are now stolen each year in Canada, and the Insurance Bureau of Canada paying out over $1 billion in claims in 2022. In that year, thefts rose by roughly 50% in both Ontario and Quebec. In this latest federal budget, the government earmarked $28 million to help stop the export of stolen vehicles. But there continues to be a push to make the best available anti-theft devices standard in new vehicles.
We all know auto theft is definitely a national crisis.
The Canadian Automobile Association recommends calling your insurance agency and asking whether the vehicle you're about to buy is at higher risk of theft and whether that will cost you more to insure it. Heather.
All right, Kamal, thanks. Hurricane Beryl has today battered Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula after making landfall along a stretch of coast popular with tourists. Wind gusts up to 160 kilometers per hour brought surging waves to Tulum. Nearby in Playa del Carmen, the storm toppled trees and covered the streets in debris. From space, new time-lapse footage shows the hurricane as it churned across the Caribbean, leaving a deadly trail of destruction in its wake. The storm is still packing quite a punch. For those details, we'll turn to CTV Atlantic's chief meteorologist, Kaylin Mitchell. Now, Kaylin, where does this system go from here?
Thank you, Heather. As Beryl passed over the Yucatan Peninsula today, it weakened down to a tropical storm. That was expected. Now, as we move through Friday night into Saturday, the next path of this system will take it back out over the Gulf of Mexico, where once again it will have access to some very warm ocean waters. Some of those ocean waters in the Gulf of Mexico up between 27 and 29 degrees, more than warm enough that the storm system will be able to draw some more energy from them. And because of that, as we move through the weekend, the current forecast from the National Hurricane Center does have Beryl regaining hurricane strength, getting back up to a Category 1 hurricane before now what looks like increasingly likely, like making a landfall around the coastline of Texas at the very start of next week. Once it's inland through the southern United States, it'll eventually weaken down to a tropical storm and then a tropical depression. Just as a reminder of what kind of impacts a Category 1 hurricane can have, well, the winds are considered dangerous, then it'll cause as much damage as a Category 3, 4, or 5. They can still cause some roof or shingle damage. They can cause some branch fall, maybe some small, shallow-rooted trees uprooted, and then there can also be some power outages. One of the biggest risks for this storm as it approaches the southern United States next week is going to be the fact that it still contains a lot of moisture. Heavy rain creating things like flooding and flash flooding will once again be a very real risk with it. Heather.
Thank you, Kaylin. Canada's Prime Minister is facing fresh criticism from one of his former cabinet ministers, Marc Garno. In his autobiography, the astronaut says the country's global reputation has suffered under Justin Trudeau. CTV's Jeremy Sharon has more.
Harsh truths from a former Liberal cabinet minister about Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's impact on this country's reputation abroad. In an autobiography set to be released in October, former Foreign Affairs Minister Marc Garno says, "Unfortunately, Canada's standing in the world has slipped. We are losing credibility." Garno blames Trudeau for the shortfalls and criticizes his international relations abilities. "I believe Justin Trudeau has overestimated Canada's impact abroad," Garno writes.
Does it matter that former ministers don't seem to like him very much? No, it doesn't. But the fact that he's kind of in a stressful situation right now anyway, it has the effect of echoing some of the concerns that we hear. It has the effect of making him look like a leader who is out of touch.
Garno's criticism comes at a time when Trudeau is facing mounting pressure from longtime Liberal loyalists, but from within his own party too, about stepping down as leader of the Liberal Party.
If caucus says we have problems, and if there's a sense that maybe caucus is not behind him, that creates legitimacy issues.
Great to be home. I love Calgary. Axe the tax.
It comes as Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives carry momentum into the summer. leading in the polls and riding the high of a shocking by-election win in a historic Liberal stronghold just over a week ago. A loss the Liberals are still trying to recover from.
The push from some has been for a reset at the top, a fresh leader who could hopefully turn things around. But even that might not be enough. A recent Nano survey for CTV News shows a quarter of Canadians say none of the potential Liberal leader candidates appeal to them. Heather?
CTV's Jeremy Sharon in Ottawa. Overseas, an historic landslide victory is changing the shape of British politics. Keir Starmer riding the Labour Party wave as he moves into 10 Downing Street as the new Prime Minister. CTV's Mike LeCouture is in London tonight.
In his first speech as Prime Minister, Keir Starmer promised to put country first and party second in order to rebuild Britain.
This will take a while, but have no doubt that the work of change begins immediately.
After guiding his Conservatives to a 250-seat loss, Rishi Sunak accepted the blame and stepped down as leader.
It is important that after 14 years in government, the Conservative Party rebuilds, but also that it takes up its crucial role in opposition professionally and effectively.
Even more shocking than the decisive Tory defeat was the rise of the far-right Reform UK party led by Nigel Farage, who was heckled at his own press conference. While Reform only secured 4 seats, their popular vote grew by more than 12%.
I had 2 very clear objectives. The first was for us to get millions of votes. The second was to establish a bridgehead in Parliament.
A parliament will look very different for Brits who went into this election calling for change. The day after, expectations have been tempered.
The hope is there will be a change in many aspects of life.
It's probably more of the same. I mean, I don't think they're going to fix anything or do a better job than the Conservatives.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau congratulated Starmer on social media, adding he looks forward to building a more progressive, fair future for people. But there is one irritant, as free trade talks between the two countries broke off in January.
So a lot of that, perhaps tension at the negotiating table will really be supplanted by a new administration with a new point of view.
That change theme seen here in the UK could continue in other European countries. France is voting on Sunday, and it could give a lot more power to a far-right party. Heather?
Mike LeCouture in London. Coming up after the break.
I'm having a blast. Woo!
The party is just getting started on day 1 of the Stampede. Each year, the Calgary Stampede Parade entertains hundreds of thousands of people with a showcase of colorful floats, high-energy marching bands, and majestic horses. And this year was no different. The event kicking off what's called the greatest outdoor show on Earth. CTV's Jacqueline Wilson brings us the sights and sounds.
Giddy up, the Calgary Stampede is underway, and whether you're a veteran or rookie stampeder, from here or visiting, it was an energetic and music-filled event, showcasing Western heritage and different cultures.
This is my first time here. Been here my entire life, but this is my first time at the Stampede Parade. I'm having a blast. Woo!
Great experience. It's nice to see different groups representing different cultures.
Yeah, Mexico. And then we have from?
Belgium.
Belgium, and this is your first time at Stampede?
It's our very first time. We are so happy to be here.
About 1,300 cowboys and cowgirls are part of 105 parade entries, including 11 bands, 21 floats, about 400 horses, and even a robotic dog. Leading the largest parade in Canada, actor Owen Crowshoe from Pagani Nation and Blood Tribe of the Blackfoot Confederacy.
It's a real full circle moment for me. I've been involved with Stampede my whole life. My family has been here since my grandparents Earl and Allison Healy have been putting up their teepee in 1985.
It's big smiles all around as people embrace the Stampede spirit for the greatest outdoor show on Earth. Jacqueline Wilson, CTV News.
Still ahead, paying it forward. Ottawa's newest multi-millionaire and her plans to share her good fortune. Thousands of Ontario liquor store workers hit the picket line today. They are concerned about job losses with the expansion of alcohol sales into convenience and grocery stores.
Job security is number one, so that's what we're fighting for.
The union is also demanding better wages and more full-time positions. The Ontario government says it's disappointed by the strike, but remains hopeful a fair deal can be reached quickly. An Ottawa woman who won $70 million in the lottery says she wants to use the life-changing jackpot to make life better for others. Patty Warden was sitting in her backyard in May when she realized she won.
I looked at the first few numbers and the other numbers matched, and I just lost it. I'm so excited.
Warden is a cancer survivor and has overcome addiction. The 49-year-old says she wants to help people living with autism and offer support to those who struggle with substance abuse.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's there. I can't wait to take care of everybody.
She plans to buy new homes for herself and her daughter. After the break, using art as an outlet for autism. A unique endeavor is taking shape in Halifax, where an artist is using his creative talent as a tangible coping mechanism to help in his life with autism, and he's welcoming others to join. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth has the story.
There you go. You guys got to share that one.
Jay Marriott is adjusting to a new reality as he leans into his artwork where he feels most comfortable.
But I always knew there was something different. I've always felt like an alien.
Marriott was recently diagnosed with autism, and it has proven to be a turning point that has redefined his life.
I didn't get diagnosed until this last year, and I'm almost 40.
Last month, he opened this gallery displaying hundreds of his paintings.
A really big goal of the work for me is to just bring joy and beauty.
Living with autism and sharing his art has allowed Marriott to have meaningful interactions with total strangers.
Sometimes the best thing we can do as makers and artists is to make a new memory for somebody.
Jay Marriott has roughly 600 pieces of art on display in this gallery and about 100 pieces from other talented artists. Digital artists Maureen and Greg Founds were blown away when they first saw Marriott's new gallery.
The color stopped me and pulled me in, and his story kept me. And I really feel like this space is capturing what he wants it to.
Marriott is proud of his art, even prouder of how he is living his life.
I just really want to see a future where kids can grow up saying, you know what, I want to be an artist, and that is a real job.
He also wants the world to see what one person can accomplish living with autism. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
Some inspiring artwork. That is our newscast for this Friday evening. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.